I never wanted a human husband. I want to say that clearly, from the very start, because everything that happened after makes no sense unless you understand how little I thought of him in the beginning. My name is Vaelthir Sona Ray, and I am the heir of the Threnody Dominion. My people have crossed 1,000 stars. We have built cities inside moons, and grown gardens on worlds that once had no air to breathe. When the humans lost the border skirmish, my father called it a small victory over a small species. He said humans were clever with machines but simple in spirit, easy to defeat, easy to forget. As part of the peace agreement, a human was sent to our court as a hostage consort. That human was given to me, as a husband, as a symbol that Earth now bowed to us. His name was Adam Cross. The first time I saw him, I felt nothing but disappointment. He was tall enough, I suppose, for a human. He had calm brown eyes and dark hair that never seemed styled the way our nobles style theirs. He wore plain clothes even when the court gave him fine robes. He barely spoke unless spoken to. My advisors told me this was normal for humans, that they were a quiet, obedient species once they understood their place. I decided quickly that my husband would be nothing more than a piece of furniture in my life, a political decoration. I told my handmaidens not to bother introducing him to anyone important. I told my father I would tolerate him, nothing more. For months, that is exactly what happened. Adam swept floors he didn't need to sweep. He helped kitchen staff even though servants were beneath a consort's duties. He asked polite questions about our customs, and never argued when I ignored him. He never once demanded respect, though as my husband, by our laws, he was owed quite a lot of it. I began to almost feel sorry for him. Almost. But strange things started happening around him. Small things I noticed only because I am naturally suspicious of everyone in my court. There was a delegate from the Corvith cluster, a proud and loud noble named Osandril, who once mocked Adam openly during a formal dinner. He called him the Empire's pet monkey in front of half the court. I remember feeling embarrassed for my own house, not for Adam, because a piece of furniture cannot be embarrassed. A week later, Osandril withdrew from all diplomatic matters and returned to his homeworld without explanation. When I asked why, my advisors shrugged and said politics was complicated. I let it go. Coincidences happen in politics all the time. Then there was the incident with the war monks. The war monks of my people are among the oldest and most respected warriors in our history. They do not bow to nobles. They do not even bow to my father, the emperor, unless he wins their respect through great deeds. Yet one afternoon, as Adam walked past a group of them in the outer gardens, I watched 3 war monks lower their heads slightly, as though acknowledging someone of great importance. I told myself it was the light playing tricks on my eyes. I told myself war monks were odd, private people, and their habits made no sense to outsiders anyway. Looking back now, I realize I was choosing not to see the truth. It was easier to believe my husband was harmless. It was easier to believe the universe made sense the way my father always told me it did. Threnody on top, humans far below, and nothing in between worth noticing. Then came the gala. It was meant to be an ordinary night, a grand dinner to celebrate 10 years since a treaty between 3 star systems. Nobles from across the Dominion gathered in the palace's largest hall, all dressed in shining fabrics, all talking too loudly about their own importance. I remember laughing at something my cousin said, feeling bored the way I usually felt at these events. Then the lights flickered. I did not understand at first what was happening. There were shouts, then the sound of glass breaking, then people running. Someone had entered the hall with the intention of causing serious harm to me, the heir of the Dominion. Guards moved too slowly. Nobles screamed and pushed each other aside instead of helping. I remember feeling a strange kind of calm, even as my heart pounded, the calm that comes right before you expect something terrible to happen, and you simply wait for it. Then Adam moved. I had never seen him move like that before. He did not run away. He did not freeze in fear like I expected any ordinary human to do. He crossed the room faster than I thought a person could move, and within moments, the danger around me had ended. 3 of our elite palace guards, trained warriors who had spent their whole lives learning to fight, were left standing confused and harmless on the floor, disarmed completely, without so much as a scratch on anyone. Adam had done all of this with nothing but quick hands and quiet precision. Then he knelt beside me, checked that I was unharmed, and asked if I was all right, in the same soft voice he used when asking about dinner. I stared at him. My mind could not fit what I had just seen into the picture I had built of him for months. "How did you do that?" I asked, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to. He smiled, the same gentle smile he always wore, and said, "Just instincts, princess. Humans surprise people sometimes." It was such a simple answer, too simple. And yet I wanted so badly to believe it, because the alternative, that my quiet, humble husband was hiding something enormous, frightened me more than the attack itself had. So I chose to believe him, for a while. But questions have a way of growing louder the longer you ignore them. I began watching him more closely after that night. I noticed how servants who once ignored him now went out of their way to greet him respectfully. I noticed how even my father's most trusted advisor, a Threnody elder who had lived 300 years and outlasted 6 emperors, always paused for just a moment too long whenever Adam entered a room, as if remembering something from long ago. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to follow him. He left our chambers quietly, moving through the palace halls with the same calm, careful steps he always used. I stayed far behind, using shadows the way I had been trained to as a child in the Royal Guard's early lessons. He walked far from the main palace, past the outer gardens, past the old library that few visited anymore, until he reached a place I recognized with a chill running down my back: the Sunken Temple. It was a place from my people's oldest stories, built before written history, sealed away and forbidden to nearly everyone. Only the choir of the first light were allowed inside, ancient beings my people worshipped as living memories of our earliest gods. No noble had entered that temple in 10,000 years. Even my father, emperor of the entire dominion, was forbidden from stepping past its outer gates. And there was my husband, walking through those gates as though he had done so 1,000 times before. I followed, my heart pounding harder with every step, torn between fear for him and fear of what I might discover. I expected to find him lost, or foolish, or in terrible danger from beings far older and more powerful than any human could imagine facing. Instead, I found something I could never have prepared myself for. The choir of the first light stood in the temple's inner chamber, tall figures made of soft light and old stone, beings who had existed since before my empire had a name, and as Adam walked toward them, every single one of them lowered their heads. They knelt. I stood frozen at the temple's edge, unable to move, unable to speak, watching beings that my entire civilization considered the closest thing to gods bow before the quiet, gentle man I had dismissed as harmless furniture for months. One of the choir spoke, its voice like wind moving through old stone. "Ashbound King," it said, "you return to us again, even in this small and humble shape." Ashbound King. I did not know the words, but something in my bones recognized them as old, older than any title in my empire's history books. Adam turned slightly, and for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. Not the softness of the quiet husband I knew, but something deeper, something patient, and very, very old. "You can come out, Veilthir," he said gently, without turning fully around. "I know you're there." I stepped into the chamber's light, my legs shaking slightly, though I tried to hide it with pride, the way my mother had taught me since childhood. "What are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me for a long moment, as though deciding something important. Then he sat down on the temple's old stone steps and gestured for me to join him. I did, though every instinct told me to run. "Do you know your people's oldest stories?" he asked. "Before writing, before empires, before even the first Threnody ships left your homeworld?" I shook my head slowly. "There was a time," he said, "when humans were not what we are now. We were among the first to travel between stars. We built and explored faster than almost anyone else, but we also made terrible mistakes. We grew arrogant. We frightened other civilizations, including your ancestors, long before the Threnody Dominion existed in its current form." I listened, feeling as though the ground beneath me had quietly shifted. A group of ancient civilizations, afraid of what we might become, came together and asked us to step back, he continued. Not through force, though force was offered as an option if we refused. We chose instead to accept exile. We agreed to forget our advanced ways, to live simply for a very long time, to prove that we could learn humility. It was not punishment forced upon us. It was a promise we made. Then why are you here? I asked. Why does your empire allow you to be treated as our hostage, weak and small? He smiled, but there was something sad behind it. Because someone needed to watch quietly, to see if your people had learned anything in all this time, or if you had simply grown crueler with each generation of power. Someone needed to walk among you without being seen as a threat, to observe honestly what kind of empire the Threnody Dominion had truly become. And what did you see? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. I saw an empire built on quiet cruelty toward weaker species, he said honestly, not unkindly, but firmly. I saw nobles who value strength over compassion. I saw a princess raised to believe kindness was a weakness. I flinched, because I could not deny it. But I also saw that same princess grow curious about a man she was taught to dismiss, he continued. I saw her notice small unfairness and quietly question it, even when no one told her to. I saw her defend her people's servants when others mocked them. I saw glimpses of something your empire has not shown me in all my time here, real mercy. The choir remained silent, watching us both. Are you here to judge us? I asked, finally understanding the weight of what stood before me. Are you here to decide if my people deserve to keep what they have built? In part, he admitted. But mostly, I came because your father's court needed someone quiet enough to watch closely, without fear clouding what they saw. The choir spoke again, its ancient voice steady and calm. Ashbound King, the time draws near for your people's return to the greater stars. The old promise nears its end. Judgment must be considered for those who held power in your absence. My breath caught. I understood now what was happening. My people, my empire, my entire civilization stood at the edge of consequences far greater than any war or treaty I had ever studied. I stepped forward, placing myself gently between Adam and the ancient beings before us, my heart pounding louder than it ever had during any battle drill or political debate. If you must judge my people, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, then judge me as well, for I am part of what we have built. But know this, I have learned something important these past months, something my empire never taught me. I have learned that gentleness is not weakness. I have learned that quiet strength can be more powerful than loud cruelty. If any part of my people deserves a chance to grow better, let it start with me. Adam looked at me for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind his calm eyes. Then he stood, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. There is your answer, he said to the choir, though his eyes remained on me. Growth is still possible here. The choir bowed their heads once more, not only to Adam, but this time, gently, toward me as well. Then let the old promise continue with patience, the choir said. Let humanity return not as conquerors, but as quiet witnesses once more, watching for growth wherever it may be found. We left the temple together that night, walking side by side through the quiet palace halls. Neither of us spoke for a long while, both lost in thoughts too large for simple words. The following morning, reports came from across the Dominion. Human ships, calm and unarmed, had entered several Threnody systems for the first time in 10,000 years. They came not with weapons raised, but with open communication, offering trade and careful cooperation instead of conflict. My father was stunned, uncertain how to respond to a species he had dismissed as harmless for so long. I stood beside Adam on the palace balcony, watching distant lights move gently across the morning sky, small and steady, patient, the way he always was. You could have told me sooner, I said quietly. Would you have believed me? He asked, a small smile returning to his face. I thought about it honestly. Probably not, I admitted. I thought you were simple, harmless. I was wrong. You weren't entirely wrong, he said gently. I am harmless, Vaelthir. To those who choose kindness, I will always be gentle. It's only cruelty that has anything to fear from patience like mine. I looked at him for a long moment, seeing him clearly now, perhaps for the first time since we had married. Not a hostage, not a symbol of my empire's victory. Something far older, far wiser, and far more patient than I had ever imagined. I married a man I believed was a harmless prisoner, given to me as proof of my empire's strength. I did not realize, until ancient gods themselves bowed quietly before him, that I had actually married the very mercy that would decide whether my people deserved to keep what they had built at all. And as new lights moved gently across the morning sky, I found myself hoping, quietly and honestly, that we would prove worthy of the patience he offered us.